What's up, y'all? This is your brother, Mr. Holipsism, and got a special show for y'all tonight. Well, first, let me tell you what the show is about, and then I'll tell you who I have on with me. The show title is "What is Your Vision of Afrikan? Where there is no vision, the people perish." Black African nationalists and African Centered Progressives are constantly talking about land, infrastructure, nationhood, and an independent nation state. But what type of nation do they envision, and what is their political ideology? Political ideologies are defined as an integrated set of political ideas about what constitutes the most equitable and just political and/or economic order. Political ideologies are concerned with the proper function of government, the issues of liberty and equality, and the distribution of goods and services. Whether or not they realize it, most people possess a definitive political ideology. So the question is, when you think of a nation state for the descendants of the transatlantic slave trade scattered across the diaspora and living as second and third class citizens in foreign lands, what socioeconomic and political context do you see in your mind's eye? What way of life do you envision, not only for yourself, but for future generations of Black African people? Join us tonight and share your vision. 1. Now, I want to bring in a special guest, somebody that you guys probably haven't heard from in a while, but I got him for you tonight. Brother Neo.
Good evening, Brother Holub. How are you?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm excellent. Appreciate the show and definitely enjoyed tonight's topic.
Yeah, man. I'm honored to have you, brother.
Thank you so much.
So let's get to it, man.
What will be what I see as a vision of a African national state for the descendants and members of the African diaspora. When I think of a nation state, I look at nation states that exist today in the past, and I ask myself the question, what is the purpose of a nation? Is it something that just comes into being from nowhere? Is it something that evolves as time goes on to meet the needs of the people? And when I think about what will be the best nation state for our people, I look at our situation in the world. Envision a place where all the problems we face everywhere are being alleviated. When I think of a progressive Black African nationalist state, I think of a sort of a society and a government that is sort of a scientific democracy. What do I mean by that? It is a nation by which the economy, the politics of that society, and the social order is heavily influenced by the implementation of ideas based in the sciences. Basically, you observe problems and solve them. So this is a society ran by its engineers, mathematicians, scientists. And why did I choose this sort of nation state? Well, I look at the problems we face today as a people and as a planet, and I realize they're mostly all rooted or involved in some way as a technical problems, rather it be the low distribution of water, clean air, the availability of housing. All of these problems are solved via these disciplines. And to have a nation state wherein the people are geared towards mastering these disciplines as a basis of their education, you will have a very highly educated and a highly skilled nation state of people. In addition to that, when you have a highly educated nation, it makes it very difficult to have a corrupt government. Why? Because corrupt governments flourish where the people are not well informed. But if you have a society that is geared towards producing the brightest, most creative, most astute individuals, you will naturally have a society that will be alleviated the problems that face so many societies today, especially societies where Black Africans and Africans in diaspora are currently sort of refugees in countries that are not their native nations, rather it be by choice or rather it be by a legacy of choices some other people made for us. So that is, to sort of the sum it all up, that is my view of what a Black African nation should be informed again in the 21st century.
Okay. Well, let's dig further in and get into some details. Of
course.
Now, you know, of course, that there's different forms of governance.
Yes.
You have your more left-leaning governments. You have your right-wing conservative governments. You have your democratic socialist governments. You have, well, you don't really have too many libertarian governments because libertarians are not, about basically operate with no government or very little.
That's pretty much an anarchist state, so to speak. So Somalia today would probably be the best example of, or say ISIS controlled chaos areas would probably be the best examples of libertarian government.
Isn't that ironic?
Isn't it?
What do you see as in your opinion, because this is we're all individuals, so we all have our own particular political leanings. But what do you feel is an efficient form of governance? Like what would your model be in your perfect world?
Well, I don't. Well, we know there are no perfect worlds, so to speak. What I would see as the best efficient model is one in which governments, and I don't believe in terms of like a totalitarian state where the government controls everything, because that's, to me, it's stagnant. It runs its course very quickly. Usually they come into place when there's a lot of chaos. They're good at establishing order in the beginning, but as time goes on, they can't adapt. What I see as the most efficient form of government is a government in which the people have a great deal of control over, and at the same time a government in which the turnover rate is reasonable and acceptable according to the wishes of the people. What I mean by that, it is sort of the opposite of what we have in terms of Congress today, where you have individuals who literally spend their lives in government, basically stagnant. All they know is Congress. All they know is basically the bureaucratic order that makes it up. And what happens is when you have a society existing in a world that's constantly changing, these individuals are responsible for making laws and policies to address that changing world. And what happens? They're not attuned to that world. And what happens is the policies and the laws are they are backwards, or they're just downright inefficient. My idea of a great government is one in which, first of all, involves a lot of young people, because let's face it, young people are pretty much the most dynamic, obviously are the most dynamic people on the planet today. They are driving the most change. The best ideas are coming from young people, or they're being implemented by old people who listen to young people. So it is very important to have young people sort of taking an interest in sort of government functions. That is, and the government being a body that creates laws and policies. A second thing that goes to that is the government is supposed to complement the society of which it serves. For example, like what I said about a scientific democracy, if you have a society in which, that is deeply rooted into the ever fast, ever dynamic, ever growing fields of the sciences and the things that scientists bring about, your government should be able to adapt to those fields. For example, let me give you an example like the cloning debate. Right now, the United States government, and a lot of governments in the world, has like a 10-day moratorium that you can hold with respect to experimenting on human fetal development. I guess this is because of pressures from different groups and things of that sort, but a lot of people in the scientific community see this as sort of restrictive. Why? Because you're stagnating the development of these technologies, which they understand may be therapeutic. If you have a government that is adaptive to the times, they will understand that, the role that these technologies play in the future. And more importantly, they have a grasp of how to regulate them because they will actually understand them. I think it is absolutely foolish to have someone as the head of a banking committee and they've never worked in banking. Or better yet, you have someone who was pretty much elected at the age of 20, they're 60 now, and pretty much when you have lobbyists from another industry come in, you don't have a clue how to deal with them because you don't understand what they're talking about. So when you talk about government, we want to discuss smart government. I know that seems like an oxymoron, but, there are smart governments exist, and you can only have smart government when you have a consistent turnover wherein you have people from successive generations coming into that government. Basically, you're eliminating the idea of the career politician. And I think that is the most absolutely critical in establishing a government that works because new generations understand the problems that the current generations face. Societies and nations, it's an ever dynamic and changing organism. And your government or institution that you put in place to make sure that there are laws in place that affects their society needs to be dynamic and changing with it.
Yeah, I totally agree. And which touches on something that I was going to ask you, and you answered it already, which is term limits. Because I'm a big proponent of term limits. It's like we have this tradition in our culture of having people in power for like 30, 40 years. Basically they're there until they're dead. And they're completely out of touch with what's going on in current times. So I'm a firm believer in get in there, do what you have to do, train and be a mentor for the next person, and get up out of there.
Exactly. Exactly.
Right.
And that speaks specifically to our situation as Black Africans in the diaspora, particularly here in America. This is not something that applies. It applies to the American government system, but it affects us within our society as Black people very specifically. And when I talk about that, not just terms of career politicians, but you have career so-called leaders. You have so-called civil rights leaders who've been around forever and have no idea what the next generation wants. They're pretty much practicing the same old tired routines, and the new generation is screaming for something different. You have sort of traditionalist religious leaders. Now, I'm not bashing anyone's religion or anything like that, but it is very critical for society or its so-called leadership to understand the times they are living in, and more importantly, to understand what the next generation wants and what it needs. Or you'll find yourself at best being kicked out, at worst, you'll end up like Marie Antoinette. So these are things to really take in mind. And one of the things that's very important, because the BAIO exists of communicating this vision for a Black African nation state, it's very important that particularly founders of a society or a nation understand the importance it is to sort of give the reins to the next generation, or sort of trust the next generation with the reins. As we grow older, we constantly get more conservative. That means we want to sort of, protect our place to make sure things are stable. Well, that sort of thinking is kind of contrary to what it means to be young. Remember, the saying young and dumb, so to speak. But it's very important that if you are sort of a founder of any institution that exists for the well-being of your people, you have to understand as time goes on, you're going to have to pass the reins on. And that's something that we see consistently in Africa today, where you have leaders who've been in power forever, and they have no touch whatsoever, no vision, or no even pride with respect to how their people should live. Look at, for example, the president of Angola. He's been there for 40 years. You have Mugabe in Zimbabwe, the oldest serving leader in the world, and you have a lot of people in so-called conscious community states who praise this man because he's able to stand up for the British. Yet at the same time, he's willing to sell land to the Russians and the Chinese. So how is this, worthy of praise, or he's not even able to lead his people, in a sense where he's able to generate a better source of life for them. So these things have to be taken into consideration. And with respect to our mission of building something on the African continent, I think there is a great advantage to what we plan on doing and the way we think, in that the vast majority of the African diaspora and Africans at home, they're very young people. So we are the only organization that has this dynamic and sort of out there message that would appeal to young people, because young people want something that's fresh, they want something that's new, and they want something they can be a part of right away, and that's something we offer them.
Right. And, I've gotten a lot of pushback when I talk about, Mugabe. And it's not that I have a dislike or a distaste for him or that I feel he's a bad person. I really don't care if Jesus Christ came down and ran for government. I want him out of there in 4 years.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I'm just for term limits. We need to start doing skills transfer, getting people up to speed, and preparing them to run with the globe.
Exactly. And if you look at pretty much any sort of progressive government around the world, and I'm going to actually give you an example of a very modern nation that that has a problem with respect to generational transfer and the demographic consequences of which have been utterly catastrophic. Japan. Now, Japan is a society that is essentially ran by the old people. I had a friend who lived in Japan for about 3 or 4 years, and she explained to me, but because the older people run the society, whether it be from the business level all the way up to the government level, they gear the society in a way that is designed to protect their interests. For example, she said in a business meeting in Japan, you will have the vast majority of the discussion would probably be about adult diapers, as opposed to the fact that, no kids are born. In fact, in Japan, you sell more adult diapers than you do kid diapers for babies. Why? Because the younger people of Japan are rebelling passively by simply not reproducing. The society is expensive to live in because you have to pay for these social these expensive social security programs to keep old people happy, that young people are taxed and pretty much have to suffer with the effects of inflation due to heavy borrowing to keep the society up. So you're pretty much squeezing the life out of the young people for the sake of a group of people who are going to die soon anyway. So now you have a case where Japan has negative population growth, and that's just not sustainable. We can easily go to the African continent and look at, situations where you have people who've been in power forever, and simply won't leave. People praise Paul the president of Rwanda for, he has a lot of progressive policies in place, but he doesn't want to leave. And eventually, if he stays there forever, the man's not going to be able to keep up with everything that's going on. He's simply going to, suffer the same effects. Even though Rwanda is very progressive, it does not work to have one person in power forever. It's not a sustainable model for a country.
Right. I agree. I'm definitely. You hit right on point with me in terms of that turnover. You got to have that turnover, and you got to have that youth, because you have to have people in the society feel that they're politically engaged with the society. And when you have a guy who's in power for like 30, 40 years, no one feels that they can contribute.
Exactly. Not only that. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Not only that, but he was in power 30, 40 years. His focus does not become the people and the well-being of society. His focus becomes, how do I maintain this cushy lifestyle? And eventually, you're going to start hemorrhaging society of its benefits, or what you should be doing for the society just for the sake of yourself. And, you'll have a case where you and your cronies will be at the top of society, extraordinarily rich, and everyone else is extremely poor. And what you're essentially doing is creating a boiling pressure cooker of revolution under the surface, because people are going to get more angry at the fact that they're starving and you're living well. And eventually the society is going to break down anyway. So the law and order that you thought you were establishing eventually is destroyed by the very system you put in place.
Right. And I feel that, in a technocracy, which is what you're describing, a person doesn't have to be a career politician because they have an actual skill that they can take outside of government.
Of course.
So therefore, their role in government would be in terms of policy. How they can affect policy, how they can make things more efficient, and then there's no need for them to necessarily be there for the next 8 years or 16 years or whatever. They can do the job, maintain the system, and pass it on to the next person.
Exactly. Like I said, the government is an institution. The reason government exists is to write and enforce laws. Now, what those laws do is to ensure the stability of a society. It is not designed to ensure. It can be written, to ensure prosperity of the society, but the prosperity of the society rests solely with the people who are creating for that society, and more importantly, the culture that society sort of is that guides it. If you have a prosperous culture of your people, for example, I'll give you Germany. The Germans are deeply civic-minded. For example, if you litter in Germany, or if you are like, say, for example, if you're driving on the road or whatever and you do an illegal move, it is known that Germans would actually take your license plate down and give it to the police that you made that move. Not because they're jerks, but because they understand the role of law in their society, and they understand that the laws that they have are for the sake of keeping a stable and healthy society available. That goes with any nation that is prosperous, that seeks to be prosperous, stable, and grow for the sake of its people. Another thing I want to discuss is not necessarily government, but the role of the economy. Now, you think about an economy, what is the purpose of an economy? An economy's purpose is to relegate the distribution of goods and services to the people. And another benefit of what I said about having a scientific democracy is that you have an economy that's doesn't base its success solely on GDP or GNP, gross national product, gross domestic products, which measure the amount of goods and services sold. But you'll have an economy that is based on how to improve the quality of life of the people, basically how to drive down the cost of living while at the same time expanding in essential services that they need. For example, if you have a society where the medical costs are at a certain price at this year, within 5 years, if you have a scientific society, obviously the research into medicine will drive that cost lower. Meanwhile, the types of treatments will get better. So you can have an expanded medical system that gets cheaper over time. So that's just one example with respect to how a progressive society is supposed to live. And when it comes to the mission and the vision that the BAIO seeks to communicate to people, is that we want to create a society that does the opposite of what this current society does, which is to create a society for Black African people that is highly progressive and ensures a great quality of life, the best quality of life in the world for future generations to come. And also to, basically take this thing far beyond anything we can imagine, basically to let our people's imaginations go wild, and basically the society becomes basically, a building block center to making dreams come true. I know that sounds like a pamphlet, but it's true. That's what it's supposed to be. A vision of a world that, of a society that is basically unlike anything that exists. And eventually, once that society is successful, you will become the envy of everybody else in the world, even though that's not your total goal, but that will be an end product. You'll get the respect of people whom you are lobbying for respect. Lobbying for respect doesn't work. But more importantly, you will create a system that you can finally have that is good for you.
Right. I want to get into some more controversial subject matter in regards to this. When you think of a Afrikanistan or the nation state, who is this nation state for? What people?
Well, obviously, it's built for Black African people of the Black African diaspora. That's initially whom it's built for. And like any nation that comes into existence is built based on the experiences of the people who brought that nation in existence. Every single nation on this globe is rooted in past experiences of the people and the culture that was shaped by those past experiences. Rather
Now,
be
before we get into the details of that, I just want to get some clarification. When you say the diaspora, what do you mean?
I mean, Black African people, America, Caribbean, of course, on Africa. If you're a Black African living in Europe, and you want to, if you're sick and tired of the racism you're experiencing in Europe, or if you feel that if you're looking around the society, that you live in, and you're starting to wake up to the BS with respect to the fact that deep down you're an outsider here, and you're just tired of wasting so much energy trying to be a part of something that does not want you a part of it, then you will look upon what we built and say, you know what, this is a place that's home for me. So basically, initially it starts out, once it's built, as a place where people who are tired of the societies they live in and can call home, sort of what Israel became to Jews after World War II. It's the same place where it's going to start off, and it's going to be rooted in that idea. It's a place that you can come, be successful, and you don't have to worry about what it is you were going through in the previous place that you left. It's a place where you can be safe, secure, happy, and prosperous. As a Black African person in the diaspora, it's built solely for your well-being.
So let me ask you a question. Let's say that you're in, I'll say Nigeria, right?
Mm-hmm.
And let's say that you're a Nigerian nationalist. Would you be in the nation state in African?
Well, it depends. If you want to, we definitely welcome all Black Africans to come to our nation. That's the whole purpose of Afrikan, to spread this culture of Black pride and nationhood through a progressive society. If you are, and that's why I want to speak solely on the issue of culture, because when you develop the culture that we're talking about for this nation, it is an encompassing, it is an assimilating culture. It's in a sense that it's one that is so all-encompassing in terms of what its mission is, that even if you are a Nigerian nationalist, after living in Afrikan for so long, you will be sort of used to the sort of quality of life we give you. Rather you're coming there to work initially, rather you're coming there for an education, you will be so used to the quality of life that we give you, eventually, the longer you stay, your Nigerian nationalism will sort of fade away. You'll stop seeing yourself as Nigerian nationalist that you've been ingrained with for so long, and start seeing yourself as a part of a greater race of people and a greater vision of people. That's when I say an assimilationist culture, that's what the United States has. People who come from different parts of the world come to the United States as strong nationalists from wherever they're from. The first few years, I'm a such and such nationalist, I'm proud of who I am. And after living here for so long, being that you have access to an infrastructure that was better than what you had, eventually you get so used to being here that you start to change and assimilate. And it happens also over generations. When your kids grow up, going to the schools here, things of that sort, listening to music, being a part of the culture, your kids become more assimilated than you were. And when they have kids, they're completely assimilated. So even within a few generations, you become assimilated into this national culture. The same principles should be in place, must be in place for a Black African nation built for this purpose. Why? Because the whole purpose of the nation is to change the culture of the entire people in the continent altogether so that its idea spreads out. That's what Europeans do. When they terms of bringing you into their country, Europeans don't bring you into their country so you can be a nationalist in their country. They don't explicitly say it. Yes, they'll entertain the idea that, okay, you're nationalist. They communicate this sort of mantra of the, quote, melting pot. And what happens is after you live there for so long, you become what they become. And, you know, another problem we have is a lot of people in the, quote, and I'm digressing a little bit, in the, quote, conscious community have a problem with this because they say, oh, Europeans use it. Why should we use it? Well, duh, we should use it because it works. Exactly. If the model works, use it.
Right.
And it goes to, and we speak to that idea. So even if you're an Angolan nationalist, Egyptian nationalist, or whatever, if you are black and you a black person of that country, and you have it in your mind that you're sort of this sort of nationalist, once you live in our country, I guarantee after being exposed to our culture, the kind of life that we want to give you and the kind of life that we have, those views are going to start changing after a while. And when you go back to those countries, if you decide to go back, you're going to see things in a wholly different manner.
Now, how would you deal with, like, as you were talking, I was thinking about the nationalists coming into the country after it's already been established and up and running, and I believe in what you're saying is exactly what's going to happen. But in the very beginning, like, how do you handle nationalists coming from other countries in the initial stages of the development of Afrikanistan, so that their agenda, so to speak, doesn't take over the vision that you just talked about?
Well, the thing is, usually when people immigrate to another country, they do so primarily for economic reasons. Now, if you're coming there for another reason, for example, if you're there to do some works by some certain shoddy administrations, you know, there'll be security forces and things of that sort to watch you and see what you're doing. But the vast majority of people who come into a progressively expanding nation and a nation that offers a great quality of life are there for the goodies, basically the great quality of life. And, you know, it's something we should not be ashamed of offering you. Well, we want you here solely we can make you assimilate. But the thing is, when someone comes to another nation, they're naturally going to have that nationalist sense of their old nation with them. Why? Because it's human nature. We are products of our environment, in a sense. If you even if you move to a nation in Africa, being someone who's lived in America for so long, of course you're going to have certain expectations and you're going to be used to a certain lifestyle that is conducive to your experience in America. You're going to see things differently from the perspective of an American living in that nation. As time goes on, as you customize the culture, then that Americanness of you will sort of weaken and strip away, and you'll start to incorporate the culture of that environment. Why? Because we're social creatures. That's what we do. We adapt to the environment that we're in. The same thing sort of will happen in that case. I don't think you'll have a case where people are just going to come in from, you know, Nigeria and say, I am going to turn this nation into a miniature Nigeria. No. Chances are they're coming there for work, economic opportunities, education opportunities, which we definitely love because we'll be more than happy to educate you. You know, the idea that you want to be for medical benefits. You have a nation with an extremely advanced and cheap medical system that's universally available. If you want that, then fine, come on in. We want to give you the goodies. Why? Because giving you the goodies is a part of our culture. More importantly, is to show you what we as a people are capable of under this culture. And once you see what we're capable of under this culture, you'll start to look at this culture as something plausible in your own life, as something for your children. So naturally, you'll have someone come over as a Nigerian nationalist, or two people, a man and a woman, they get married, have kids here. Naturally, their kids are going to go to our schools. Their kids are going to do our after-school programs. They're going to get involved in, you know, all of the things we got to teach, the science culture, the science entertainment culture. Let's talk on entertainment culture. So the kids have become more assimilated into our nation. So even though the parents may hold strongly, if they decide to hold strongly to their Nigerian nationalism, the kids, the next generation, will definitely gear more towards the culture we have. And to speak on the idea of the Nigerian nationalism, I am not someone who is explicitly against other Africans bringing their culture and ours with respect to creating a cultural dynamism. What my problem is when you as a black African see your little tribalism or your little nationalistic culture as bigger than that of the well-being of the entire race. And that's one thing that our culture must incorporate with respect to this nation, is that You will learn about what we have to teach you, but you will learn to see yourself as a black person in the context of being part of a greater race with a greater mission for that race. And our nation leads that mission. So when you have people coming from other countries and they are assimilated into this mission, when they and their kids go back to visit their other countries, they'll start to see things differently. And more importantly, they'll go back with skill sets needed to develop those nations, to build the things they need for those nations, within those nations, to build the things, generally, expand our culture. So generally, I don't have a problem with an African nationalist or the Nigerian nationalist coming in and, say, I want to be sort of a nationalist in this nation. Now, if you're an English nationalist or a German nationalist want to come in and do that, we're going to have a bit of a problem.
Exactly. Now, there was a point that I wanted to make about, nice segue into and this is a topic that I think that you would appreciate because me and you are both foodies.
Yes.
I've always envisioned the concept of an African fusion restaurant as sort of like a microcosm of what Afrikstan is going to be about. Because I envision Afrikstan as a modern cosmopolitan African diaspora society.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like when you get up in the morning, you can go and get some fish and grits, or you can get some ackee and saltfish. You know what I'm saying?
Like a jollof grits or whatever.
Thank you. It's like I really see it as a fusion of we're actually creating something new. It's sort of like an African version of New York,
of course,
where you have all of these different takes on African cultures coming together, and that's why I've been so interested in creating like a menu which gives us the similarities within our cultures. Like if you notice, in Africa, the chickpea is a very popular ingredient.
Yeah.
Why not use these dishes that in West Africa, South Africa, North and East Africa, and create something new that embodies what's already been done before? So it's like a microcosm.
Exactly, and I think that's an excellent point. One thing for sure, one thing that people all over the world appreciate is food. Why? Because we all need to eat. That's the basic biological function. So if you want to start a cultural cross, a cultural diffusion, food is a great place to start because it's not controversial for most people. And if it tastes good and people like it, they like it. And that's, that's what it speaks to. More importantly than that, I think what you were discussing with respect to having a modern cosmopolitan state centered around African cultural dynamics, because that's basically what it is. It's extremely important to maintain that African identity in the context of what the nation we propose has it, such that you are seeing now different African identities put into context of the acceleration of an entire race of people. So when you go into a city like that, where you once before, if you're an Igbo and you had a problem with Yoruba in Nigeria, and you go to, a part of the city where you see both these cultures merge, and it is shown not only merge, but it's a part of a greater mission, then you start seeing your different people whom you thought of as different from you as part of a far grander thing. And one thing about human nature is that people like to be a part of something that is grand and that is part of something that is big and winning. That's why the United States has sold itself so well to so many people in the world. Why? Because it's a big sort of winning thing. It sells itself as this place of opportunity, but, it sells itself as the idea of this is a melting pot where everybody comes from different parts of the world and makes it big, and you start saying, oh, great America is a great place. What it essentially is, it's a melting pot. It takes part of the culture you have, but it puts it a part of its entire system for the sake of, propelling this American, empire throughout the world. the same thing can be said when we hope to create an African with respect to bringing different cultures throughout the continent together, for the sake of saying what Africanness, this is basically communicate the idea that Africanness is something that is very special, but placed in the context of Black empowerment or Black, imperialism within the African continent. It's far greater. So what you saw before is your culture being just a part of your tribe. Now you see your culture being part of a greater mission. And it's very important that people understand that their uniqueness that they bring to this society is not just, something you hold on to wherein it is something you're proud and makes you distinct. Yes, it is. But it's something that makes you distinct, that makes you also a part of a greater mission as a whole. And I think that's something that people are going to really respond well to, because where you saw your culture as just this small microcosm before, now it's a part of a macrocosm that's going to take it and everyone else to a greater height. So you now become part of a great master culture that has this great vision for you.
Right. And I often make the point that, let's say you have two people that came from African, or let's say you have a person that comes from America that's African, and those two people get together and they have a child in African. Is that child going to be African American anymore?
Probably not. It'll probably be Afrikstani.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah, because naturally he's born in the country, so it'll be a guaranteed citizenship of our country. And we're happy to have that child here. He's definitely going to be Afrikstani because he's going to be in the education system, so he's from birth, from kindergarten on in, he's pretty much ours. Right. So it's not, as long as you are Black African or Black African from the diaspora and you come to our country, I guarantee you the cultural precedents that we'll establish will be so strong and so assimilating, kind of like the Borg, well, not like the Borg, but in with respect to bringing you a part of it, is that you will, over time, after enjoying the fruits of what we have to offer, and especially your kids growing up with what we have to offer, you won't even notice by the time that you would probably be a patriot of a nation and you don't know how you became a patriot of it. So that's basically what we must establish there. And I feel that the whole idea of trying to sell people on this is the idea of a waste of time, especially being where we are today with this. Right now, it is just an idea, but Napoleon Hill said it. All great achievements start with just an idea. Right now, being where we are, it's critical that we have people who are passionate about this idea, rather you have the skill sets to implement it or not. Why? Because if you believe in something, naturally you're going to, be open to gaining the skill sets to help you implement it. So that's another thing that, that's very critical that we talk on. But back to your question with respect to, if any children born here, we have any doubts that any children born in this nation would actually be sort of patriotic to its mission, I have no doubt that they will be, because it's a nation geared towards, the well-being of young people, and most certainly they will definitely love that, to have a nation that purely made for your well-being, just so you can go nuts and make your ideas happen. Please, young people will have no problem.
Yeah, and it's funny that you was talking about the Borg. If you take all of the scientific paranoia out of the concept, you're absolutely right, because the Borg says we will add your biological and technological distinctiveness to our own. Your culture will adapt to service us.
Service us. Exactly.
It's the truth.
Minus the resistance is futile part.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. And, because we're both Trekkies and sci-fi heads, we don't want to get too far off of this, but it's very important that we address that concept. And the idea that we as African people should not be aggressive with respect to making sure that our vision comes to be. We have a vision for the continent as a whole. We have a vision for the race, and it starts with nation, the culture of nationhood that we're putting together. There's nothing wrong with being aggressive and nothing wrong with being ambitious and sort of conquistador-like with respect to bringing this culture about. You don't have to do it through war or force, but it is very essential that we have it so that this culture seeks to establish itself as the master culture for all African peoples. Why? Because it is the only culture that exists solely for the purpose of making African peoples the best on this planet, giving them the best quality of life, giving them the best, prospects for the future, leading in everything imaginable. And there's nothing wrong with that. Why? Because every other culture on this planet has it for them. So why not us? So I'm like, why do we have to be meek about the idea of establishing African superiority? And that speaks to the point because we've been on the receiving end of everyone else's superiority, that we've counted in our heads that the idea of seeking this for ourselves is somehow bad. I always give the notion of fire. If someone always used fire to burn you, but at the same time using fire to build their, forge steel for themselves and, to cook food for them, naturally you should see fire in the same light as they use it. In terms of a building, as a tool for building, and as a tool as a tool for, defending yourself, as opposed to it just being something that should be thrown at you and burned to you. So we have to really change our mindset on a lot of the concepts where we on empowerment with that respect.
Yeah, and I use this as an example too of what you're saying. You know how the United States defeats fundamentalist Islam? And this is so funny because this was by a CIA agent. I wish I knew the guy's name so I can give it to you. But he was talking about different tactics on how to get information from, like, say, a terrorist, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you're dealing with, now, if you go by according to television and 24 and Jack Bauer and that whole thing, everybody has it in their mind that you take a guy, tie him to a chair, beat the crap out of him or torture him, and then he gives you information.
Yeah.
But in real time, it's actually the exact opposite. The CIA agent said that what he does is, if you have a guy coming from a fundamentalist situation, he comes in, let's say he's captured, he automatically is thinking the worst because he's used to what he has to deal with on his side.
Yeah.
He said when they come in, he's got a comfortable bed.
Yep.
He's got nice surroundings. You got a couple of nice-looking women walking around with clothes that his women don't wear. He can drink alcohol. They'll give him like a drink. He give him some Coke or Pepsi. They basically just bombard this guy with American culture. And by the time he's so used to being in that comfortable situation and eating a nice steak or doing whatever, getting him some McDonald's or Burger King.
I give him that much.
Yeah, exactly. After that, he's ready. First of all, he's ready to get up out of where he is.
Exactly.
And then he's willing to, spill the beans on just about anything because he's like, wow, this is what it's like in America?
Of course.
And that's how they get their information.
Of course. And it's the same thing. And, honestly, these tactics, because they work, and that's another thing I want to talk about. If someone uses something that consistently works to their advantage, if you're trying to get to where you are trying to get and it mimics what they got, use it. I mean, I have my problems with U.S. policy with respect to how they use their military, but the United States military is a great fighting force. My thing is, why should not we build a similar fighting force to defend ourselves? Because it works. The same thing that goes with these tactics in respect to dealing with situations that we have or we may face. If the United States sends what are called jackals in to destabilize governments that are against you, then we as a nation state, particularly in Africa, we don't like a certain African government because the ideas of how they run are against our, cultural standards, we should use those similar tactics. There's nothing wrong with conquering something for the sake and well-being of your people. The only difference is we're conquering black people to make them a better people. Everybody else is conquering us to use us. Why not use those same tactics to conquer our own people for the sake of our own people? Mao Zedong did it with the Chinese. He first conquered his people. He said, listen, this whole fractional crap that we have going where everyone in different parts of China see themselves as distinct has to go. The same thing happened with the Japanese. We had different shogunates, things of this sort, which made them divided, and they had to get together. Europeans basically had to go through the same thing. The only difference is there was no outside force that really forced them to do it. After having a world war that damn near destroyed the continent, they said, you know what, it's better, that we sort of, meet on common ground with certain things. So the idea that a strong hand we as African people, particularly progressive African people who particularly want the best for our people, should not use sort of a strong hand when it's needed, is to me asinine. And that goes back to what you were saying about the culture itself. That goes into, basically what we're saying. If you have a guy who's going to come in thinking, he's going to bring sort of his culture to our place of, our nation after enjoying, having a great health care, clean water, basically pretty much having, advances in his living year after year and see how wonderful it is. Eventually he's going to say, listen, I want to be a part of this. And what's better than that, if he goes to another nation, now he is fighting to, disperse this superior culture to wherever it is he went. Because that's what a culture war is. A culture war is the idea that you have, and I always believe this, the stronger your culture is, the more it will, stronger cultures conquer weak culture. A culture is strong when it can provide the basic necessities that people seek on a biological level to the best ability. That's what I, mean by that. And I'll touch on that later, and I'll clarify that later on, if you wish me to.
Well, man, I tell you, you're on fire, brother. We've been on here for an hour. You are really killing them, and it's such a refreshing change because one of the things, and this is just on a personal level in terms of me and my show. I was getting to the point on the show where I just felt like I was beating a dead horse. It's like we have put out so much information as the BAIO in regards to nationhood that I just feel it's not even. It's almost like like you said, some amateur high school wrestler trying to challenge Brock Lesnar. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. It's like we've already done smashed the concept of this integrationist America thing into the ground, and we basically presented a really strong, in my opinion, undefeatable position. So it's good, like listening to you talk. All you can do when you hear you is you get excited because you hear the possibilities. You know what I'm saying? Your imagination runs wild, and I just want to contrast that to what you normally hear in the conscious community. And you haven't been on the show lately, so this is something that me and Thomas have come up with to describe.
Oh, the white man is Thanos kind of thing?
No. Even worse than that. This is like our people have turned misery.
He's gone from being Thanos to the what's the most powerful hero? What's the most powerful guy? The one above all, where he's just all powerful.
And not only that, but just this whole atmosphere of creating misery or having misery as a fetish. So me and Thomas have come up with this clip to describe it. This is how it is. Peace. What's up, y'all? This is your brother, Mr. Holipsism, and got a special show for y'all tonight. Well, first, let me tell you what the show is about, and then I'll tell you who I have on with me. The show title is "What is Your Vision of Afrikstan?" Where there is no vision, the people perish. Black African nationalists and African Centered Progressives are constantly talking about land, infrastructure, nationhood, and an independent nation state. But what type of nation do they envision, and what is their political ideology? Political ideologies are defined as an integrated set of political ideas about what constitutes the most equitable and just political and/or economic order. Political ideologies are concerned with the proper function of government, the issues of liberty and equality, and the distribution of goods and services. Whether or not they realize it, most people possess a definitive political ideology. So the question is, when you think of a nation state for the descendants of the transatlantic slave trade scattered across the diaspora and living as second and third class citizens in foreign lands, what socioeconomic and political context do you see in your mind's eye? What way of life do you envision, not only for yourself, but for future generations of Black African people? Join us tonight and share your vision. 1. Now, I want to bring in a special guest, somebody that you guys probably haven't heard from in a while, but I got him for you tonight. Brother Neo.
Good evening, Brother Holub. How are you?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm excellent. Appreciate the show and definitely enjoyed tonight's topic.
Yeah, man. I'm honored to have you, brother.
Thank you so much.
So let's get to it, man.
What will be a great, what I see as a vision of a African national state for the descendants and members of the African diaspora. When I think of a nation state, I look at nation states that exist today in the past, and I ask myself the question, what is the purpose of a nation? Is it something that just comes into being from nowhere? Is it something that evolved as time goes on to meet the needs of the people? And when I see, think about what will be the best nation state for our people, I look at our situation in the world. Envision a place where all the problems we face everywhere are being alleviated. When I think of a progressive Black African nationalist state, I think of a sort of a society and a government that is sort of a scientific democracy. What do I mean by that? It is a nation by which the economy, the politics of that society, and the social order is heavily influenced by the implementation of ideas based in the sciences. Basically, you observe problems and solve them. So this is a society ran by its engineers, mathematicians, scientists. And why did I choose this sort of nation state? Well, I look at the problems we face today as a people and as a planet, and I realize they're mostly all rooted or involved in some way as a technical problems, rather it be the low distribution of water, clean air, the availability of housing. All of these problems are solved via these disciplines. And to have a nation state wherein the people are geared towards mastering these disciplines as a basis of their education, you will have a very highly educated and a highly skilled nation state of people. In addition to that, when you have a highly educated nation, it makes it very difficult to have a corrupt government. Why? Because corrupt governments flourish where the people are not well informed. But if you have a society that is geared towards producing the brightest, most creative, most astute individuals, you will naturally have a society that will be alleviated the problems that face so many societies today, especially societies where Black Africans and Africans in diaspora are currently sort of refugees in countries that are not their native nations, rather it be by choice or rather it be by a legacy of choices some other people made for us. So that is, to sort of the sum it all up, that is my view of what a Black African nation should be informed again in the 21st century.
Okay. Well, let's dig further in and get into some detail.
On this idea, there's no reason to believe that he would not contribute the time, energy, and effort to learning and skill in engineering, a skill in business, rather it be learn how day trading or how to start a business, and either build himself up so that he can be the person he needs to be effective in this movement, as opposed to taking some graduate PhD student from Stanford, who has a great inflection in his voice, married to a white woman, has a great paying job, and thinks America's the greatest thing ever, and convince him to leave what he believes to be a cushy lifestyle in a society that he knows deep down is not conducive to his well-being to, abandon all that for the sake of taking up this struggle. So I think you would have a greater time and you would have more greater success in training people from the bottom up to get the skills they need and you would get better results in 20 years doing that than you would get in 20,000 years trying to convince people who are convinced that they are comfortable in the situation that you're trying to pull them out of. And, this speaks to two things. Harriet Tubman said it. I would have freed many more slaves if they only knew they were slaves. And, and you can look at the life of Malcolm X. Malcolm X is the perfect example of what it is I'm speaking on.
I was just getting ready to mention that. Malcolm, because he's the working model. He's the prototype of what you're talking about.
He is the working model. He is the one who inspired me to think like this. Because the idea that, you have someone who is, quote, unquote, skilled or knowledgeable, that they are born with a predilection to being that skilled and knowledgeable is patently false. It is easier to take someone who is passionate. Someone who is passionate will become an expert at their field with consistent study. It takes, 10,000 hours before you're consistent study before you're an expert at anything. That's what, Malcolm Gladwell discovered in his book, and that'll be a great. We could build a show on that later in the future. But passionate people to me are far more valuable than, quote, skilled people in the sense that it takes passion, because passionate people become skilled people after a period of time. You can take a guy who believes in what we believe in, and you could turn him into a mathematician if we need mathematicians. But it's difficult to take a mathematician who essentially believes in the system that we're trying to leave and try to turn him into a believer. It's just unpragmatic. And I think what a lot of people are scared of with respect to in this movement and what we're doing is sort of going down this road because it's hard work training somebody. It's hard work, getting somebody these knowledge gaps when you don't even have them. Hell, I even, several times put out the idea of us establishing STEM study groups so we can learn the skills as, we go on. We may not know how to build a well, but hell, learn how to build one. I mean, none of this stuff was, given to us from Mount Olympus. So these things were learned. Everything that all infrastructure is the application of resources and skill sets. That's all it is. And once you get the skill sets, you eventually get the resources. You find out how to get the resources, and you can produce this infrastructure. But like I said, trying to convince someone who is comfortable to get uncomfortable for a greater vision, I think that is just unpragmatic, and it just does not work.
Yeah, like that. Like Malcolm X, isn't it difficult to believe that at one point Malcolm X was a numbers runner and he used to do home invasions?
Yeah.
Malcolm X. You know what I'm saying? So that's why I'm not so dismissive of people who come, like where you come from or your environment, because a lot of times you can't help it. It's like Richard Pryor, I'll use as an example, was raised literally in a whorehouse.
Of course.
His mom was a prostitute. He was raised around that, raised around pimps, raised around prostitutes or whatever. And despite that, I mean, he could have went 1,000 different directions. You know what I'm saying? But despite that, he ended up being a success.
Exactly. And like I said, it goes back to that point. And I want to talk back to Malcolm X, because the difference in being a numbers runner, if you read the autobiography that was written by Alex Haley, when he first learned how to read, he didn't know. That's why I mentioned when I mentioned that idea of taking a prisoner with a third grade education level, that was him. And the thing is, he was an autodidact. Now, autodidactism, and this is something I want to talk about because it's very important, especially if you're at this place with this idea. It's the idea of teaching yourself something. Malcolm X embodied the culture of nationhood on a personal level, and that's something we really need to hammer home as well, too. Nationhood does not begin with just a state. That's a nation state. That begins with that point. Nationhood begins with a culture, and that culture is based on the idea of self-sufficiency and building a better life for yourself. Malcolm X embodied nationhood. Why? Because he started out with pretty much nothing. He pretty much had he pretty much had a junior high school education by the time he left school. and he dedicated time and energy to learning to read, such to the point where he got passionate about learning. And it got to the point where he's read so much and became so well learned on his own that he was able to debate people from Harvard, militant integrationists, of whom he mopped the floor with, and things of that sort, and became the most prominent speaker in the Nation of Islam. The Nation of Islam, a lot of people admit this today, will not be where it was if not for Malcolm X's ability to speak. Because if you look at Elijah Muhammad, not to take anything away from Elijah Muhammad's work, he was not a great speaker. And you have to understand the power of the spoken word with respect to communicating ideas to people. The more powerful a speaker you are, the better people will be drawn into, what it is you have to communicate. So that's something very important with respect to taking passionate people who believe in what you believe in and encouraging them to get the skill sets that they and you will need to make your goal happen. And that's something we in the BIO have to really hammer forward with respect to making our mission happen. Basically, we have people with skill sets coming in, that's great. But we have the passionate people there. Our next goal is to make sure how the heck do we, the passionate people, get the skill sets we need. And it's better than that, not to say that, someone with a skill set who doesn't believe in what we believe in is not useful, because no, they may not believe in the nation state, but that does not say they will not be willing to teach us what it is they know, particularly if you have an engineer. And I've met a lot of STEM professionals over my lifetime. One of the things they are very passionate about is transmuting those skills, because it takes a lot of energy, a lot of work, a lot of passion, to create those skills. And what I learned about passionate people is that I'm very happy to teach you what it is they need to teach you. And I really don't care if, where they come from. They can be white. If you're a white guy who wants to teach us advanced mathematics, I will happily accept your lesson. The thing is, no matter where you get this information from or how you get it, rather be on YouTube, rather be a professor, whatever, get the information and use it to making this goal happen.
Right. I want to start bringing some people in. One person has their hand up. Now, keep in mind, people, hit number 1 on the dial if you want to talk. I see Dev is on the line, but he hasn't hit number 1, so I'm assuming he's doing something, probably just listening. But if you want to come in, just hit number 1. I'm bringing y'all in cold, so I'm just warning you in advance. Don't get stupid on me, okay, because I don't know who you are. All right, last 4 digits, 8365. What's your name? Where you calling from?
Hey, it's Salima from North Carolina.
Hey, sis.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How you doing?
I'm awesome. I was so excited to see that post that you were on.
Oh, yeah, man.
Yeah.
Say hello to our brother Neo. I don't know if y'all have met yet.
We haven't. Peace,
brother.
Hello,
my sister, Neo.
Hello, sister. How are you? Good to hear from you.
Yes, sir. I'm enjoying thoroughly the conversation. I completely agree. And the Honorable Elijah Muhammad had a third grade education. I believe Malcolm went to the 6th or the 7th grade.
Yes, thank you. I got them mixed up. It was Elijah Muhammad with the 3rd grade. Yeah.
I know that's where you were getting the 3rd grade from. So I just wanted to let you. But I mean, that in itself is it shows you the power of a mind, of a true intellectual. He built a multi-million-dollar nation within this evil, wicked nation with a 3rd grade education.
Exactly, and that's something. And and I said that before, that I didn't want to take anything from him. And it's something that we, especially, working on this sort of Herculean goal, should keep in mind. The
and to
power
be honest,
of passion.
Right. And to be honest with you, most successful nations, countries, empires, they were not built by intellectuals.
No, never.
By people who had extensive schooling and things like that. The majority of them were not. They were built by, I mean, and it baffles me how people pretend to be so intellectual and they don't know these basic, historical facts.
Exactly.
So I love when I hear somebody say something and they really don't know what they're talking about. I'm like, dude, no.
Exactly.
That's
I mean,
true.
And what you speak towards is very important, and I can never stress enough the power of passion for what it is you want to do. Like you said, they're never really built by intellectuals. It takes the guy who is essentially a fanatic and crazy about the idea to really inspire and fire the people up. The intellectuals, they always come in later when they find out, okay, this thing has some wings and it can take off. Then they come in and add their skill sets to the equation and really make it take off.
Yeah,
but,
the water's cool. The water's fine. Come on in.
Exactly, because that's what an intellectual does, an academic does. An academic is someone who pretty much weighs the pros and the cons. They're not risk takers by nature. But the people who are the risk takers, when they go through the wilderness, chop down the trees, kill all the wolves, and say, okay, it's safe to come through, then, the engineers come in and say, okay, we can take the trees, make the lumber, build the buildings. So that's how it naturally happens. With respect to Malcolm and Elijah Muhammad in particular, is that these people were both, risk takers, but they took the time out to learn the skills and have the knowledge necessary to get that groundwork done or get it started so that at least when the intellectuals got through, they said, okay, we got something to build on. And that's very important for us. I mean, even if you are listening, I'm going to tell you right now, if you are listening to this broadcast right now and you understand we need electrical engineers, biomedical engineers, things like that, mathematicians, and you're saying to yourself, God, where are we going to get mathematicians? I wish I was one. The best thing you can do at this moment is when this broadcast goes off, go to YouTube, type in basic math learning, and teach yourself math. Because, who's to say that you cannot be that mathematician? Even if you don't become the best math, professional ever, at least learn enough so that you can teach somebody else. And if you're passionate about what you're learning, at least you can teach somebody else, then that person, especially a child, a black child, I'm really going to talk about that later, but especially if you teach a black child to be passionate about something, he's going to take that thing to a whole nother level. He's going to supersede you, and he's going to supersede every expectation and dream you had for him. So my thing is, even if if you understand something is important and you understand the importance of having the skill sets and passions to put something forward, just get started where you are. I mean, Chris Gardner wrote a book called Start Where You Are. Well, that's very important. Just start where you are. I mean, even if you have a third grade education listening to this, start where you are. Learn what you think we need, as opposed to waiting for Superman to come along and just, somebody to come on. Because, like you said, the cavalry ain't coming. A lot of the militant integrationists we get into it with are skilled professionals who we would love to have on our side. However, they don't believe. I believe that if someone who does believe in this can get that person's skills in a matter of years, as opposed to trying to convince that person over that same amount of time to believe what we believe, because they're stuck in where they are. So
it's there's so many aspects to having a nation.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has a role. No matter what you do, if you whatever you do, we're going to need it.
Exactly.
There's some things that we won't need, but the majority of the positions, and I'm saying positions so that everybody knows that even if you're not on that master level, we're still going to need you on the, everything has levels. We're going to need people to build. We're going to need people to dig. We're going to need people to do everything.
And like I said, even if you don't, I'm sorry to interrupt you, sis, but even if you don't know how to do it, just start learning. I mean, nobody comes into anything as an expert. And I want to go back to what I learned about Japanese history. I forget I remember the man's name, but there was a case of a Japanese physician, and he wanted to learn Western science. So he literally spent hours, 1 year, translating a Western science book into Japanese and learning it. I mean, it's something like that. I mean, you just got to have that dedication for it. And, the thing is, what a lot of people don't understand, and I think a lot of people, particularly in the quote-unquote conscious community, is putting out there, it's like, this is gonna happen by some miracle. Like, everything is gonna just magically get together. No, I'm gonna admit, when we first start on this thing, it's gonna be rough and bumpy. But what's more important than anything else is that we just start. And if, the people see the effort that we're putting in and, the fact that we're willing to dig this, rocky terrain up with pickaxes and shovels, people will say, you know what, these people are putting it in, they're serious, let me help out. And that's always in the beginning. The beginning is always tough. But the most important thing ever is to just get started.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly. Nothing in the beginning is pretty.
Salima?
Yeah,
Hello?
I'm here.
Oh, okay, yeah. No, go ahead. Say what you were saying. I want to ask you something afterwards.
Okay, nothing in the beginning is pretty when you first start. Nothing. In the beginning, that's where it's hard. You're going to get your nails dirty. And you got to be willing to do that. If this is something that you believe in, something that you want, and literally this is our only option. We don't have any other option.
No, we do not.
And the people who are wanting a nation state here, who want to stay here, I can't say it enough. I can't say it. I'm not going to say it nicely. It's not going to happen.
No, it's not.
If you want a future for your children, if you want a future for your grandchildren, if you want a future for yourself, we got to get up out of here. That's the end of it. No getting around that.
Exactly.
It's not pretty. It's not going to be pretty. But it's something that we do.
Of course. And I totally agree with you. I'm going to be honest, the only scenario I could see where it is remotely possible to build a nation here is if some Walking Dead kind of catastrophe happens and everybody dies but us. That is the only thing I could see how that's happening. And my thing is this, why would you want to build a nation here? First of all, there's already an infrastructure here that somebody else has built, and they're not going to just willingly give it to you. I mean, anyone preaching this idea that we're going to get a section of the United States solely for us, you got to be out of your mind. First of all, the people of the United States are not going to stand by it if the government gives it to you because they're going to come and attack you to begin with. Secondly, it's very unlikely that you're going to beat the United States on its own soil to get it. I mean, first of all, even if you could, you shouldn't even bother to waste that much time and energy to try to get it. Meanwhile, you have a whole resource-rich continent full of people who look like you and will probably be, won't give you as much problems as the people here. So, honestly, it's more pragmatic, and honestly, as hard as it may be to build a nation state, I still think that is roads easier than trying to convince a nation that has had you here for centuries that you are still a part of this nation, and when they have consistently on centuries told you that you're not, and we are not interested in including you. So my thing is, the little bit of pain we deal with for a few generations to build a nation out of nothing, it's far more beneficial to go through all that than just trying to, pretty much raise this dead horse. It ain't even a dead horse. It's a damn dragon that's trying to eat you. Trying to convince this thing to, befriend you, it's not going to work.
I'll find you a real cracker and ask him what that phrase means, make America great again. What does that mean to them? They're all spewing this. What does that mean? Make America great again.
What does make America? Well, America was never really. Well, it's just a platitude.
It's great for them.
It's great for them.
When we were slaves, it was awesome for them.
Yeah. It's like I've gotten to the point where I'm so, fixated on what we want for our nation state. I just look at whatever it is that, goes on here with respect to its politics. It's like, it's to me, it's elementary to me because we all understand how this thing works. We know the platitudes and how, no matter who wins this election, rather it be Clinton, Sanders, or Trump, we're still going to have the same situation we have as black people. No one's going to do nothing for us. But the idea that he says make America great again, first of all, it's a problem. America is as strong as it's ever been throughout its history. I know a lot of people are not going to want to hear that, but it is. America, it's not waning in power with respect to where it is now. Now, is the model they have sustainable where it's going to keep power? Probably not. But that's not happening right now. Make America, it's just a way of drumming up white supremacists, to make them, excited for him or whatever. It's, and to go deeper than that, the guy he really doesn't even want to become president. It makes no sense for him to do it. It's just something to get some publicity from him. The guy is an attention junkie for the most part. But what I want to speak to on that is that this shouldn't come as no surprise to us as African people, and it certainly shouldn't come as no surprise to us as African people who understand this situation, particularly as African progressive people who want a nation state. I mean, this is elementary to us in a sense that we know this already. We've been through this 1,000,001 times before. What we in the BIO must do is use this as an opportunity to say, okay, if this is not a reason to build a nation state, then what isn't? I mean, all the people who have not heard what we've said, this validates what we believe, the core of why we believe what we believe and why we do what we do. This whole nonsense about make America great again and stuff like that. We know we have no place here. The thing is to just get us to a place where we actually start putting in the effort and the work to make what we want to make happen. Hell, I don't care about making America great again. I want to care about making Africa great forever. So that is what I'm on.
I mentioned that because black people are running around saying it. Make America great again.
Because they're stupid. I'm sorry to say it like that. And that's what I mean, one thing we have always done at the BIO is that we have never been in denial with respect to the current state of culture of black people in America. And the idea, we know that there are a lot of people caught up in this sort of matrix hoopla, and I hate using that platitude, of this whole system, and that's true. That's why when I stressed earlier in this discussion the importance of the people like you, me, Holub, Jonathan, Tyler, who understand what it is we got to do and really get this thing rolling, because right now we are just a small group of people, but we're a small, passionate group of people, and once the people see what this small, passionate group of people are willing to commit and actually communicate the vision we have for them, then, they will start to, hate to use the term, sort of wake up to a much better possibility. But, we understand that we as a people have, in this country, been striving our best to sort of fit in. I was that point in my life at one point. Thank goodness I woke up. But, it has its roots in sort of the trauma that we've been through, and I don't want to really get into that too much, but we know why this is. We know that, a lot of people mistakenly believe in this, quote, idea of America. Well, the most important people in this discussion right now are us, no matter how small our number, because we are the people who are going against the grain. We are the people who are offering a true alternative to this. And I think us doing our work at where we are now is far more important than sort of paying attention to what other folks are doing. Why? Because even though it is our mission to save them, in a sense, we cannot save them if we do not, first build ourselves up and make this thing happen.
Oh, absolutely. It's just, it in attempting to gain, even the attention of our people. There's so going on, and there was a video that I'm going to share it with you guys, where it was a bunch of Bernie Sanders supporters praising him. Mostly black people, famous black people, Harry Belafonte and people like that. And during the video, there was a part where they were talking, and in the background they had Bernie Sanders' head flying through the background of the video. And I'm like, so y'all don't see this.
Like they're making him to be a messianic figure. I mean,
like
this is,
you know, the subliminal messaging that they are, you know, and bright colors, and in his head, just little cut out his head flying in the background.
I mean, they did it with.
I literally had to explain this to somebody. And then she didn't get what I was saying, and then she said, "Yeah, I get it." You know,
yeah, she doesn't get it. I mean, she doesn't get it.
Okay, you know, she didn't ask me the question in the post. She inboxed me because I guess, you know, she felt embarrassed because she didn't get it.
Exactly.
You know, and I'm like, crazy that she's a professional, and she didn't understand what was going on.
Exactly.
Know?
I mean,
I don't get it.
I know, and it's best for your sake to not truly fixate on these kind of things and frustrate yourself with this, because where you at in your thinking right now is on a whole nother level. It's like where we are in the BL, we're sort of visionaries in a sense, and people don't follow visionaries until visionaries make things happen. You know, not everybody can think outside the box. That's just true about human nature. And I understand you get it, because it's not new, because they did it with Barack Obama to us. They, you know, presented him. And there's always, you know, the Democratic candidates always present themselves as sort of these messianic figures. And what they're really doing is just insulting our intelligence, and we unfortunately fall for it. Why it is important, like I said, when I always come back to us and what we do, is because I think we're the most important people in the room. Even though we're not the loudest people in the room, even though we're not the most well-known people in the room, we're the people in the room who have the solution. And that is the most important thing. If you have the solution and we work towards that solution, then people will eventually start seeing what it is we're saying. Me, I've long since given up trying to wake people up. The thing is, you're not going to wake people up with words for the most part. They'll hear what you have to say, but they'll go in one ear out the other. When you demonstrably demonstrate what it is that you believe, then people will sort of seeing is believing. That's the thing. When you demonstrably create a model of what it is you want to see, what it is you want to communicate, then people will become more interesting. I always talk about the zeitgeist movement and how they made the documentary, and they sort of created models of this sort of utopia where they live where there's no money or anything. We know that it's, you know, complete, you know, impossible. But, you know, they got people to believe because they were able to communicate their vision more thoroughly. And it was a vision that was completely contrast with the lives that they were living, the lives of suffering that they were living. That's how they got people excited. To us, that's the same thing with us. We have to really communicate this vision of what it is we want and really prove to people we can do better than where we're at now. I mean, the reason why the Democrats are able to communicate their vision to our people in the way they are is because we have not really communicated our vision in that sense as effectively as they have. Once we start communicating our vision, then we will have, you know, much more success.
Absolutely. I agree.
Exactly. All right, hold up. You still there? Hello? Oh, I guess we left hold up. Oh, my goodness.
All right. How we lose him?
Oh, okay. He was off the line. On a second. He should be back soon. Oh, yeah. He's having some technical difficulties now. He should be back with us. But, I mean, I'm very excited that, you know, that we've come to this place. I mean, like I said, I've never been more optimistic, you know, than I've ever been, because something like this is in place. So yeah, it's it's something that we look forward to in a sense. I mean, I would feel more optimistic with having 20 people who understand these truths than having 20,000 people who don't. So it's like You don't need like a mass movement to get things started or to make a difference, because if a mass movement, what's up, old?
Oh, yeah, I was having all kinds of problems getting in. That's why you didn't hear from me. I had to literally call on another line.
No worry, that was Bernie Sanders people.
Or Hillary's, either one. I want to bring in another caller. Oh, also Salima.
Yes, sir.
When we going out, man? I got to get you and my goddaughter. We got to go out.
I will be in New York the last weekend in April.
Excellent. We all meet up. That's where we're both based here in the Big Apple.
Yeah, you can meet him in person.
Yeah, the Big Rotting Apple.
I'll be there.
So
I'm hoping Friday morning I'll be in New York. My niece's birthday party is Saturday, and then I'm hopefully Monday afternoon, Monday evening. So.
Well, make sure that you call me the moment you're in town. And me and that other cheap dude is gonna take you out.
I love that guy.
Exactly.
I know Mark is listening, so that's why. Anyway, can I keep you on with us? Are you cool?
Oh,
all right. Let me put you on hold. Now this is a person that I've been dying for you to meet.
Okay.
Let's bring him in. Jonathan.
Yo, what's up, brothers? How y'all doing?
Jonathan, it's good to hear from you.
It's good to hear from you too, brother. I know Sister Salima is still on, but what's up, sister?
Jonathan, one thing. Can you turn down your computer, because I'm getting feedback. I'm hearing myself talk.
Okay, hold on. In the car. Yeah, I'm on speaker. Are y'all hear me?
I hear you good.
Oh, man. Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you all perfect.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah, man, there's so much I wanted to discuss with you. Thank you for coming on. I mean, first of all, you could if you want, you could come on any of our shows, We want to see if we could have you get a regular show and just start talking about STEM.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's something we're in the works of doing right now. I was trying to get in touch with another brother in the BIL who's much more heavily involved in STEM, and we host like a weekly STEM show where we just discuss like the latest in STEM development and how we can apply it to a new nation state, or
Mikhail?
Yeah, Mikhail, exactly.
Yeah.
That's something I definitely. He's very brilliant, and to have his expertise. In addition to, the ability to communicate this vision that we have, I think it'll add a very powerful another element to our media presentation in the communicating of our ideas. So that's something definitely I would look forward to in the future.
So, yeah, I was thinking in terms of STEM and in terms of energy. When we look at green energy, clean energy, when we talk about a nation state, would it matter if when you're looking at different types of segments of populations, whether it's 10,000 people or 200,000 people, is there a difference in the type of infrastructure when you're looking at power and energy?
Oh, of course. I mean, and I did a broadcast in the past about STEM. I think I hosted a Minister Aoud and we discussed this. It definitely is. When you have a nation that is particularly growing, it is very essential to have an energy infrastructure that can grow with that nation and deliver energy to meet that demand in new capacity. For example, we're producing energy, like if you're producing 2,000 watts, if you're producing a certain wattage for a certain number of homes and you add more homes to that system, you're going to overload the system or drop the wattage output overall. When you design particularly an industrial energy system, and I spoke about this before, it's very critical that you design for overcapacity. For example, if you're designing for a nation right now for 20 million people, when you set up your energy infrastructure, you should at least set it up initially to handle 100 million people. Why? because your nation's going to eventually have 100 million people in it. Not to mention the fact that you're going to, as the nation's economy expands, there's going to be more higher demand for energy. In a past broadcast, I spoke at length about geothermal energy. That's something I'm extraordinarily excited about, along with hydroelectric energy, in the sense that because it's a continuous energy supply. Wind and solar are great, but wind and solar only work when the sun is out and when the wind is blowing. Geothermal, the center of the earth is hot all the time. So that's a continuous energy source that you can always use. With respect to other energies like nuclear and coal is obviously dirty. In fact, there's an article out today where the largest private-owned coal company just filed for bankruptcy. Coal is dirty and is bad for the environment. Nuclear has the same issues. With respect to nuclear, I think, with respect to nuclear technology, it should be solely for research or defense purposes in terms of powering nuclear-powered aircraft carriers and submarines to defend the nation. But as a terms of using it as a means of producing civilian power, one, it creates so many security issues and environmental issues. If you look at Fukushima and Chernobyl, we need not say any more with respect to that when that goes wrong. But my biggest interest in terms of sustainable energy is really tapping geothermal, particularly enhanced geothermal systems where you pretty much drill a really deep well anywhere in the world and pretty much pump a heat exchanging fluid to spin turbines in. This way you can bring it anywhere. Right now, the vast majority of geothermal, these commercial geothermal plants are on what are volcanic vents where the energy is really easy to get access to. Particularly in Iceland, there's some places in Kenya that have it where, you have that access. What I love about enhanced geothermal systems, you can build it anywhere. And I've always had the idea of having a, quote, viral energy system. Basically, you build a geothermal electric plant. The plant generates a certain amount of electricity, and basically you have industrial mining equipment that are electrically based. So you take some of the electricity from that plant to build another plant, and so on and so on. So that's something that, these are ideas that I want to incorporate for this sort of nation state, where you have an energy infrastructure that not only meets the nation's needs, but can also expand upon itself and pretty much have an abundance of energy. And like I said, some of that energy could be used to desalinating seawater, so you can have a consistent supply of fresh water on demand. So, you have energy for your sewer system, which is extraordinarily important. You have fresh water for the people. You, of course, have energy for buildings. And, with the big boom of the electric car now, if you have pretty much a nation that produces an overabundance of electricity, then there's no reason why your vehicles can't be electrically powered. The only difference is, companies in our nation will be building it. Tesla won't be getting the contracts that produce all these cars. So this is the kind of stuff the kind of ideas that we like to put forward and sort of thinking outside the box and using pragmatics, solutions to very real problems, and to really have permanent solutions to real problems as you go forward. And this is something that we take pride in as being members of the BAIO, of, being the only people who are talking like this.
So, like, in terms of, the two different scenarios, if you had, say, a municipality or our nation state of, say, 10,000 people, scenario A, in scenario B, we say 150,000 people. In terms of capacity for the advanced geothermal systems, what would be the smallest of scale type of energy infrastructure needed? Like, what's the smallest capacity for the advanced geothermal system? Yeah. Well,
to be honest with you, you could take a geothermal system, you could size it to run something as simple as a house, or you could size it up to run something as large as a nation. I mean, geothermal, the capacities are really highly flexible. I mean, you can even have, what is best, you can even have a decentralized energy system, which is even better, because that means if one thing goes wrong, your whole half of your country goes without power.
Right.
When I say with a decentralized thing, you can have a geothermal plant that powers all the houses on a single block that could connect into a larger geothermal system that will kick in if that system goes down. Or you can have individual geothermal plants power something very critical, like hospitals. Like you would have a geothermal plant power a hospital. This way, the hospital's energy will never go down. You can have a plant that powers water treatment facilities, which are absolutely essential. That very few people talk about with respect to having a nation, the importance of having clean water and treating sewage. You can have something, every university have one. I spoke about, building advanced research facilities wherein you can have a system, a geothermal system that powers, a large hadron collider-like thing where you will have, advanced research in, in the physics and stuff. It's so versatile. And if you look at the total potential of geothermal energy right now, we're just talking geothermal, we're looking at the total reserves are about 4,000 zetajoules of energy in the earth. Guess how much energy, and if you were to take all the energy used by every country, United States, China, everybody, how many zetajoules of energy you think everybody combined uses?
Out of the United States and who else?
Yeah, everybody. Add them all up. You'd be wonderful to hear this. A half a zetajoule. The Earth, so human civilization is using 1/8,000th of the potential energy resource that can be harvested via geothermal. So we know this is an extraordinarily abundant energy source.
Okay.
And we're not talking about even things like tidal. Geotidal is another abundant energy source that's, continuous because, the tides are always moving and, it really doesn't depend on the weather. So
this is something we've always talked about. We've had conversations about an integrated energy system, like where you can use all of those things.
So exactly. Tidal, nuclear, not nuclear, but solar, wind, all this stuff.
Right.
It's not like, and I don't like the term alternative energy. Energy is energy. If you look at a physics book, an electron produced by spinning a turbine, spinning a generator that was nuclear powered versus coal powered versus geothermal powered versus solar power. It's the same darn electrons, the same type of electricity. It's just about
Yeah, I was gonna say, what are some examples of places using advanced geothermal systems?
Well, wait, before you get into that, because I got to bring some other callers in.
Okay.
The show is getting ready to end in 10 minutes.
Oh, snap.
Stick with me, okay, Jonathan?
Oh, for sure.
All right. Let's bring in, you know who this is. This is the man. Kala Genesis.
Where's my applause, man?
I don't know. Where's the applause at? Y'all got that.
We'll have like a WWE like theme for you. And, we'll have the crowd cheering and all that stuff. And
there it is.
There you go.
You smell what the collar's cooking.
Exactly. No, we only smell what chef is cooking.
Yeah. But I would like to say, man, starting off, Neo, man, we come a long ways, man. 2 years now. And, brother, man, I really feel, and I put myself up there like that, but I really feel that if I walked away from this, the movement will be fine. You know what I'm saying? After I hear Neo, that's what I want to hear. If I walk away from this, everything will just go on track because we know our manifest destiny.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. The Neo gave it clear tonight what the manifest destiny is. And the question we have to ask is, and we have to clear up among ourselves is, who most likely to have this manifest destiny? It's the people who are suffering the most without anything. Geopolitically, we black people in America do not have anything. You know what I'm saying? Because we're completely dominated by another race of people. You know what I'm saying? So if somebody wants to join with us, they feel what we're saying and want to build with us and everything, I say, fine, come ahead. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
The challenge is trying to get those people who think that they got it made in America. That could be African American, that could be a Caribbean, whatever, who thinks America is the best thing since apple pie.
Exactly. I don't even think there's a challenge at all. I say, there are two things that can happen with those people. You have some people who are naturally cautious and comfortable where they are, and, they won't believe until they see. we'll get those people when we build something and we show something's better. That happened when the state of Israel was first established. I read the history on it. When they first went, it was so bad, half the people left. After it worked, after World War II, obviously, that was a major one. But after it worked, they came back. So you're going to get people who sit on the fence.
And also, Neil, did you read about this? Where there was Russian Jews, right, in the 90s? I don't know if you remember that. You probably wasn't around then. There were Russian Jews who exited Israel, said we just don't like they were so Russianized, right? They basically didn't feel the connection to Israel, even though they had everything. They had a middle class life and everything, but they just said the culture wasn't there, and they went back to Russia. That's what they knew. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
So it's a challenge trying to assimilate people. You know what I'm saying? Even though they're all Jews and everything, it's a challenge trying to assimilate people when their culture is different. We have that. That's a challenge to make it one culture where everybody's one. Because I don't want any of this tribal stuff and everything like that different. We have to all be black people. We have to be a black state. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
That's the only way we're going to stand up to the West. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. And when we spoke on, and I spoke on that earlier about, the importance of creating a superior culture mindset and how that plays into changing people. And I want to actually finish my point on the terms of the militant integration. If there's those people who sit on the fence, who we may win over, and there's some people who will just fight against you regardless, we have our ways of sort of dealing with them, but they're not that important because at the end of the day, what we're doing, they're going to be where they are. And, if they believe in it, I say let them. I mean, if you want to stay here, I'm not going to fight with you because that's energy I spend making what we have to build happen. But I also, Jonathan asked me a question, and I hate to take you off this particular topic about. He wanted to know where other examples of enhanced geothermal systems are. There's one.
Kenya.
Kenya
has it. You know the beauty part about Kenya is? You see ordinary Kenyans, probably no one in the third grade, right? The government trained them to be engineers, and they're basically producing bulk megawatts of geothermal to the national grid. You would never think about anything like that in America. You know what I'm saying? Just ordinary Kenyans, they running their own operations, selling bulk megawatts to the grid.
Actually, believe it or not, the Americans did try it. They spent like $1 billion to make it happen, and it didn't work. But like I said, nothing beats a failure but a try. But Kenya is one place that has it. In France, in terms of particularly enhanced geothermal systems, where an enhanced geothermal system is a well where you pump in your own heat exchange, namely water. You could probably use other, chemicals in the heat exchange like a refrigerant because it vaporizes at a lower temperature and it produces the same pressure. The only difference is when refrigerants are consistently cycled, exposed to heat, they become acidic and start to damage your system over time. Meanwhile, water does not have that problem. You can turn it into steam water a million times over and it'll...
What do you think about the oil companies that are trying to put out this nonsense about geothermal being damaging the Earth's crust or whatever like that and causing earthquakes?
That's absolute garbage.
That's what I'm saying.
It's actually been shown definitely that oil drilling, because what happens is, all right, oil, if you understand how oil is made from dead and dinosaurs and all that other stuff, sitting under the earth, it's under pressure, and it's a highly pressurized fluid under earth. When you release that pressure, basically the cavities under the earth become, unstable. So you cause more geothermal problems. I think Michio Kaku even spoke about the effects of that oil drilling has had on, the earth's, in terms of seismic activity. So that's absolute nonsense. Another thing is, when you create a geothermal well is pretty much different, especially an enhanced geothermal well. It's really no different in diameter than a regular oil well. What you're essentially doing is you're drilling a big hole down the earth, deep enough so which you can get to depths where the temperature is hot enough to flash water into super steam where it can spin a generator. That's it. And I had an idea of creating an inner tube, basically, where you have an inner tube, feed the system in the water, it goes to the outer tube, which is deep underground.
The water right back into the earth. It puts the water,
exactly.
We use water right back in the earth.
Exactly.
I just want to interrupt you all for just 1 second.
No problem.
Anybody that wants to speak, raise your hand because we're getting ready to end the live broadcast, so I don't want to bring you in if you're, doing something in the background. I see two people have their hands up.
If you want to take another call, you can. You know what I'm saying?
No. It's gonna get ready to end in like 2 minutes. The live broadcast, so y'all can talk until then, and then what I'll do is I'll bring people in the overtime.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
So go right ahead.
Yeah. Neil, the other thing you were talking about was the when you were saying about the cultural that was really, really good. You gave a real social, psychological, social speech. You said we're social creatures by nature, and people naturally want to adapt to a surrounding. Now, how would you reconcile that with the Muslims in Belgium? They have not assimilated because it could be that Belgium was just like an unassimilated culture, and the Muslims are afraid because all these terrorists.
Well, my thing is, and I actually do want to speak to that. It's very important that when we look at media, we know how to filter out, certain things versus others. The vast majority of Muslims living in Belgium, I'm hearing myself in the background. Somebody has to speak up.
Yeah, that's Jonathan.
Have sort of assimilated in the Belgian culture. They enjoy the life that they live. And, and you have to understand about white media. They are very, very good at taking isolated incidents and blowing them up into proportion. You know how this is true? Because Muslims are happy in every other country but Muslim countries. So
true.
that goes the same for French Muslims and, I should say French Arab Muslims that live in these countries. The vast majority of them, and we know this, are just people who just are there for the same reason that French and Belgian people there. They go to work every day. They want to feed their families and go home.
You opened something interesting, right? Now, let me ask you a question. Could it be, right? Remember Edgar Allan Poe said wars are never created for outside thing. It's always created to enforce or disrupt the social order inside of a country. Could it be that the Muslims in there are trying to disrupt the peace that the Muslims are enjoying in France and everything? The extremists are doing that, and they basically want France to turn on the Muslim population so they can have a base of operations to operate out of. See,
Hold that thought, because we're getting ready to end the live broadcast.
Okay.
I just want to end the live broadcast like I usually do. Everybody stay on. Don't go anywhere. But I want to end it, in the proper fashion.
Exactly.
We declare our right on this earth to be a man, to be a human being, to be respected as a human being, to be given the rights of a human being in this society, on this earth, in this day, which we intend to bring into existence by any means necessary.
All right, we're in the overtime, so your mics are open.
All right,
Jonathan, I'm gonna bring you in. You got to turn your speaker off or the volume, whatever, because it's echoing.
All right. Now, Kyle, I want to answer your question about what you said about the Muslims, friend. Yes, and in respect to certain groups that have a certain, agendas of what they, perceive, of what they want to do. The thing is, it's not happening everywhere. Usually, countries that ISIS hit are countries involved in the Middle East somewhere in territory that they don't want them in. France, Belgium, England. They're not hitting Sweden and they're not hitting Norway. Why? Because Sweden and Norway are not there.
So we know to keep out of their business in the Middle East. I don't want no trouble with those people.
Exactly. There's nothing in the Middle East I don't want. It's hot, it's desert, and I don't need oil. I envision electric infrastructure. There's nothing I want from the Middle East, and they can have it over there. If they want to be over there, fine. Let them do what they want to do. They have nothing I want. What I want is on, the continent of Africa. Now, Northern Africa, where there are black people living under the rule of Arabs, we're going to have a problem with that. But that's another discussion. But my thing, to go back to what they were saying about what's going on in France, in Belgium, and things of that sort, you have to understand, and it speaks to the defense of what I said about superior cultures and sort of having a strong culture. And I'm going to speak to that, how strong culture and infrastructure go hand in hand. The vast majority of Arabs living in France and in Belgium and stuff, they are just like everybody else. They just want to go home, go to work, go home, enjoy having clean water, enjoy having the lights come on whenever they turn it on, and go to work the next day. Just like everybody else. And, I'm going to speak to the idea of what the purpose of culture is. because rather you understand it or not, the purpose of a culture is to establish infrastructure. How your culture dictates how your people interact with the world around you or interact with knowledge of the world will dictate how your people use that knowledge to build an infrastructure for their people. If you look at cultures that are, quote, backwards or, quote, not as advanced, you look at the infrastructure those cultures produce. You don't have a modern quality of life. You don't have clean sources of drinking water. You have cases wherein a drought kills damn near all the cattle and crops, as opposed to having a culture that respects science and engineering. And you can have literally a nation in the desert, but will always have fresh food and water. So these are the importance of culture, and I believe strong cultures inherently produce great infrastructures and meet the basic qualities, the basic necessities of life for its people. That is a given. And when you have someone of a weaker culture where they come from a country where water is scarce, electricity is almost non-existent, you come to a place where these things are readily available, and naturally they're going to gravitate and respect the culture that brings them these wonderful necessities of life that they did not previously enjoy.
So, Neo.
Yes.
Yeah, this is Thomas. What's going on, kid? So I think this actually kind of lends to a larger discussion of when you talk about culture. One aspect of culture is homogeneity.
Yeah.
And if you look around the globe, if you notice, the countries that have the most peace and most order, in most cases, not all, but in most cases, if they're developed, they with the exception of the United States, and that's where you have so many civil issues, but there's a level of homogeneity that lends itself to a common sense of belonging and wanting to see your fellow man or woman or child succeed.
Yeah.
And by extension, having that homogeneity ensures that within that culture, the context and the expectations that government will be transparent, it'll be effective. We won't have a popularity contest determine who will lead, and people will lead based on technical qualifications. That I think that's kind of the context that we've kind of laid down for BL, because there's been a bit of unrest within the group, and I think I've talked to several people about this offline. So everyone always has somewhat of a different spin or position on certain things. So what I've said from the beginning, right, is I lay it out very clear. Like, I've always envisioned, and I think some of us, kind of agree for the most part that, what we're looking to do on the continent is to create a context where we have, our own autonomy, similar to how Hong Kong has a relationship with China within a host country. And the reason being because to try to redraw stupid-ass colonial lines would lead to nothing but bloodshed and failure. Because we can't be because we're already working as insurgents here, so we're going to try to go somewhere else where we're going to be kind of detached. It's just not realistic. So trying to create the context based on we're going to work within the confines of the host country. And then over time, maybe that's something that can happen. We can split off. But then also, what I've said is that the first 10 years that the nation stays in existence, I feel like it's not unrealistic to have predominantly the council or whoever is going to be in charge of making decisions for at least the first decade. It most likely will be African American. Now, with that, over time, once people have established roots and been ingratiated into the culture that we've created and the concept we've created, then you can have people who have established roots, showing that they have loyalties and ties to that nation state, and then we can, if they meet all the qualifications that we set forth for someone in the council or ruling body, whatever the case may be, then fine. Yeah. And I think that discussion has been going back and forth. That's what my position is, because you have to have I think when any country has been formed, there's been a level of homogeneity from day one. And that's all I'm saying. I think because I think there's a concept that we have to start it off as a pluralistic nation state, and quite frankly, my thing is that most of these other people around the globe who have African descent do not identify with us culturally.
Mm-hmm.
They're quick, and you're in Brooklyn. You know how it is. West Indians in a lot of cases don't fuck with us. You know, like they're quick to jettison us. You know, or like even Africans, they're very quick to. I've even had a situation with a girl who she looked like Bernadette Stannis, but she told me she ain't black. She's Caribbean.
Yeah,
I mean, like,
and wow. Okay. And I want to speak to that point. I mean, I believe we spoke to that early in the broadcast when I talked to Hold Up about the purpose of what is called the master culture. And what I said with that, a master culture is a culture that is specifically engineered so that it is to be, what I say is engineered to be supposed to be inherently superior to the other cultures that exist for the said group that you're trying to reach. What I mean by that, a master culture is supposed to produce a nation that is so powerful. It is supposed to exude its mastery by producing a nation that is so powerful and all-encompassing in its culture that it will be impossible to deny it. So even if you are so, and I spoke to Hold about this, if you see yourself as quote Afro, if you see yourself as Caribbean before you're black, this and other, if you come into a nation state that prides itself on being a black nation state, and it gives you and you receive a quality of life in that state better than anywhere else. Not only that, but everyone around you believes in this culture. Naturally, you're going to diffuse and assimilate into this culture, like we said about the Borg, in a sense. And that is why it is absolutely important to have at the value of this cultural system is building a strong infrastructure and a strong nation around this culture. Cultures don't profess their superiority by merely saying they are superior. They demonstrate their superiority by showing you that they are superior. When a nation wants to show you that it's strong and mighty, it shows you images of its economy, images of its military, images of its cities, how powerful and large they are. That's how a nation projects itself macroscopically on the individual minds. And what you have to do in producing this culture, you have to create something. You have to show that this culture is so much bigger and grander than anything you are personally that you would have no choice but to want to be a part of it. And that's what exactly America has done that very well. That's why you have the situation where you have
that's why they
people.
That's why they brought them to Ellis Island. The first thing they told them, big buildings, the Empire State Building, the George Washington Bridge. And they said, "Damn, I'm coming from a shithole." You know?
Exactly, and that's the same thing we have to do. And the thing is why I say infrastructure is so important, because infrastructure, and I think what we have to fail to do when having this discussion is we fail to relate these kind of questions and conflicts back to what is our core root. We are the Black African Infrastructure Organization, and you tie this into the fact that infrastructure, if you create powerful symbols of infrastructure, displays of infrastructure, you don't have to say our culture is superior, because we can damn show you it's superior. If you think, you come into our nation with this idea, I'm the most proud Jamaican in the world, I was like, well, okay, but look what we built. This is what being a Black African has built for us. This is what this culture does for us. Well, your little nonsense, which you believe in, is nothing, because you are standing in the shadow of our culture. And after a while, that will dawn on them. And even so much that they go back to Jamaica after being assimilated into it, they're going to look at Jamaica and say, oh, this is shit compared to what I was. We could show you what Black power really is, because I was standing and living in the midst of it. So that is why it is very important for us, when we think about these things, to relate in the concept of nationhood and infrastructure, but more so in the concept of Black dominion, if we go back to Star Trek and other thing. But the idea of dominion is something that we're in. Dominion simply means authority over sort of a land. It's dominion is just more. It's just your domain. You have to project power. And one thing Black nationalists and Pan-Africanism have always been scared to do, and this is what frustrates me about the Nation of Islam, is the idea of acquiring and projection of power. Projection of power does not necessarily have to be done via military power. You know, we should have that available to protect ourselves, but the projection of power comes to projection of economic power, symbolism, via your culture, via your music, everything. That is a projection of power. To project power, that's how you win people over. People are not won over by weak displays of culture. You have to give strong visual displays of culture. And you literally have to make your culture, what you believe, seem bigger than what they are individually. And that's how you get them to assimilate into your nation. Not by having 1,000,001 discussions with them or just, trying to explain the benefits of your culture. People understand that science is powerful when it works. Take, for example, Iran, and I'm going to give you guys the floor. The Islamic State of Iran. Iran is sort of a fundamentalist Shia Islamic nation. However, they respect the power of science and engineering, such to the point where they're number 12 in nanotechnology research in the world, even though they have tons of sanctions against them. That is one of the ultimate examples of what happens when a culture, i.e. the scientific culture, has refreshed itself so strongly that even a fundamentalist religious nation has to respect it. And that is something we have to do as a people in the nation.
So, and to carry that point further, so there's certain people that believe that they should, that we should merge this obscurity within the context of another country on the continent where the standard of living is below what we're at now.
No, that is absolutely that should never, ever, 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 ever be our desire. Our desire, because we come from, and let's be clear, our experience in America has been both traumatizing and at the same time enlightening. Living in America, we have an idea of what it means to live in a place with a stable and good infrastructure. That is something we need to bring with us. We're going there to establish a nation state that is built on our value system. We're not going there to sort of merge in obscurity, because we already understand that the chaos and the cultural confusion that's already on the continent is what enabled it to be conquered and divided in the first place. We're here to do the exact opposite. And we're here to do the exact opposite. We're here to say, listen, we're going to build something so strong and powerful that's right on your homeland, on your home continent, that you don't even have to go to Europe or America to see it. You could come here and see something bigger and grander. And when you're in the midst of this granditude, in the midst of this dominion, that tribalism that you used to have will be erased away, because you are overpowered by what we have to offer. And the thing is, I believe in shock and awe with respect to culture. We have to shock and awe people. We're not there to merge with their culture. We're not telling them to get rid of their culture, but at the same time, we're here to produce a master culture for which they can see their culture as a part of. And that master culture is a black empowerment / black dominionist culture. That's what we're there for. We are uncompromised on that thing.
Hey, brother.
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah.
Hey, can you brothers hear me? Peace.
I hear you.
Hey, this brother Equaneve, I'm calling from South Carolina.
How you doing,
peace
brother?
to the family. Peace to the family. Hey, it is a great topic tonight, and as it relates to nation building. Peace, brother. Peace. As it relates to nation building. What's that?
Yeah, make your point, brother.
Keep going.
Yeah, I was just basically tuning in to what the brother was saying, and he definitely spoke on some great, powerful points. And I was just thinking, as it relates to energy, and just talking about Hakan.
A butt coming.
Yeah, as it relates to him. What's that now?
No, I hear a butt coming.
Color.
What?
Let me shut up.
Okay.
I like that brother here.
Hey, one thing I understand. One thing I understand about energy, I guess, stagnation. I don't know who that is continuously trying to talk while I'm talking, but it's kind of stagnating some energy. But I wasn't saying no but, nothing. Everything that the brother said was absolutely 100% accurate. You understand?
All right.
But the thing is, I mean,
gentlemen, I would like to hear the brother's question, please.
Okay.
Yes, Brother Khaled, please.
This is just my thing.
Mm-hmm.
Because the brother said some very key things, and as it relates to energy, because like what you were just saying, even when we're thinking about geoenergy or the intrinsic forces of nature, we also look at those things within us, and we look at like how black people give, or like 500. We have given $500 billion to the church as that relates to that's energy. We look at that dollar. We look at the dollar as being dead, but we know very well that's energy. Even if we took 10 dudes, 10 guys, and we call all of their mothers some bees, imagine what type of energy they would have just running out. So just showing the where we get energy from and how to utilize it. But my question is, brother, like, why is it that upon embarking on this path to sustaining energy, to looking at lifting black power, and maybe you brothers on the show can tell me, why is it that so many times that black people are looking to do this work, but they overlook Kemet, they omit Tama Ray, they look all past, the great accomplishments that we actually were able to mathematically and scientifically lay down on the Nile Valley. We'll look all over that to call ourselves Jews, to call ourselves, and my question is that when we get back, because you said one main thing is culture, and the thing that we have to have inside culture is identity. It's righteous and rightful identity, because we have people now that are, they're in culture, they're in drug culture, they're in rave culture, they're in all types of culture. But I, as an African, I want an indigenous, organic African culture that is good for me, and that where it helped my ancestors elevate, so it would do the same to me. Because you said something about master civilization. So my thing, even when we were saying that Kemet, reigned supreme for 10,000s of years, and like what Dr. John Henry Clark said, our world was almost over before we even know there was a European around.
All right.
So basically, like I said, even when we're looking at that lineage and comparing America, and even looking at America and its greatness, comparing that to our own African greatness.
I'm going to speak to all of that right now. With respect to sort of looking at history, history has its purpose with respect to creating identity. Now, with respect to creating a modern nation state, this is something that is going to be based solely in modern science and engineering. I'm sorry to inform you, but you're not going to learn electrical engineering from looking at the things of Kemet. I think it's inspiring in terms of, inspiring a people's self-esteem. However, building a modern nation state takes modern technology, modern understanding of technology. With respect to cultural diffusion and cultural empowerment, that comes from building a natural, powerful culture. That's going to come from building a state. The fact of the matter is, power is everything. With respect to being able to project power, whether it be economic power, social power, or political power, or just energy power altogether, it is absolutely essential that you create a powerful people, in a sense that, and who has a sense of dominion over the world. Understand this. Whether it be Kemet or whether it be modern states in Africa or African cultures, they were not superior in that they were conquered. Understand this, a superior and powerful culture will not be conquered by a less powerful one. That culture has to come in with other means to conquer you. Now, that does not to say your cultural identity is inferior. However, if your culture does not permit you to adapt to the current situation you have, then you will be conquered. And that's what happened with Kemet. That's what happened with West African civilizations. That's what happened with Rome. That's what happened with China, and so on. Culture is not a static thing. Cultures adapt to different environments and sociological changes. And if your culture cannot adapt, it will be conquered, no matter when or how you build it. It is very important, yes, you agree, that we have a unique African identity. That is something that roots the people in. It gives them a sense of who they are and sense of purpose. But more important than that, you need to have a sense of African dominion. That means be prepared to build an African empire with all the nations on the continent, protect that nation, and if need be, have to go out and defend that nation with superior technical force and military force. It is not rooted in any spiritual aspects, although spirituality, I say, has a metaphysical, aspect with respect to, being a great mind game or whatever. But none of this, what I speak, is based in any form of spiritual culture whatsoever with that respect. I speak solely in terms of pragmatism and the application of science, engineering, technology, and economics as the basis of it, and your African identity is the reason why you want to study these things further. But my thing is
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I just wanted to say, if we're going to disregard the African traditional systems, like the systems of Ife, because these are 100% absolutely spiritual traditions, and to disregard these traditions, listen, my right quick, brother, to disregard these traditions is a very un-African thing. So as we're talking about control and power,
my thing is this, and let me, let
the two people talk.
I would like to
two
speak.
People have dialogue.
All right.
Let the other two
my
people
thing
have
is this,
dialogue.
and I keep hearing this a lot, of the purpose of maintaining traditional African systems. My thing is, when I establish, let's say, a master culture that's based in this, that master culture says I am black first, and everything else comes down from that. And part of having a black dominionist system is mastering the disciplines that enable you to generate power. Now, if that traditional African system goes against that belief system, it has to go. Every single civilization on this planet that has gotten powerful has but ultimately got rid of traditional systems that went against the empowerment of the people. Now, if you want to keep them along for sort of ceremonial purposes, the purpose of maintaining African identity, that's fine. But I'm not going to turn to a traditional system with respect to building a water treatment plant or building a hydroelectric plant or basically designing new and advanced weaponry to defend the nation. I'm not going to do that. And especially if those traditional systems have led to the division on the continent that enabled it to be conquered in the first place. So that is not something I want to maintain. I am not, with respect to culturally conservative, with respect to that aspect. Mao Zedong did this with China. China had plenty of cultural traditional systems. He got rid of them. Why? Because it divided the nation up to the point where they were conquered by everybody. You have to get to a point where you understand that things are past, may remain past. Nothing remains consistent in the future. Everything changes at some point. And once the people are conquered, that has to bring into the validity of the power of those systems. I'm not going to keep something in place simply because it's African. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it must go. Simple as that.
Hold on, brother. If I could just finish real quickly. Yeah. I agree with what you're saying, but the thing is with African culture has been torn apart. It has been ripped apart. As we're laying things down, potentially trying to critique African culture, we have no right to. You don't know what's going to work for us because we have not been trained inside even that language, my brother.
Okay.
So even to kind of like, hold on, right quick. I just wanted to say this because you said something very important about symbolism. The same symbolism, like we were talking about the American dollar, all the stuff that supplies, that gets these big-ass guns. On the back of that dollar, it has the picture of the pyramid. It has all types of symbolism, even when you look at the rituals that are performed in a lot of these buildings that are making the shit go down. We already know that they do rituals. They are doing these fucking rituals, regardless of how the depth of the rituals, they are doing them. Even as it relates to Christmas Day. Christmas, around this time, the winter solstice or the neb hen has always been very important to us as sustaining fertility. And, even with studying energy, we know this, okay? But this today, now, well, us as black people, we go and help support this. This is the day that they generate the most income out the whole damn year on this Christmas Day. You understand? And just talking about the importance of ritual, talking about the importance of hekah or certain words, knowing the importance of symbolism. You understand? When you start dressing certain, this is the importance of having proper identity within the culture. Because if you don't, our asses will be feeding white Jesus, and we'll be waiting on white Jesus to come back and save us, and he ain't coming. And again, as that relates to facilitating energy, because with that $500 billion that we've given to white Jesus, or with the $5 billion that we go spend at the liquor store, if we know how to control ourselves, knowing how to cultivate self, knowing how to cultivate our spirit, knowing how to slap your hand in discipline. You understand? When you know that's our main issue. That's our main issue with being able to control anything of energy.
All right, I'm going to speak to all those points for you, all right? My thing is, and I've always said this before, when you start a movement, it's best, if you're going to save a people, you must first understand the people who think like you do. And once you have those people together, you cultivate power, and you take control over the culture. You do not wait for the vast majority of people to follow you. Why? Because the vast majority of people are followers. They do not lead. It is not their place to lead. For those of you in a leadership position, you must understand the position you are in and basically seek to take control of the culture. Now, you mentioned the $500 billion spent on Christmas. If that $500 billion spent for the very same Christmas rituals, were in black-owned businesses, I wouldn't care. If the liquor stores were black-owned, I wouldn't care. Why? Because the money stays with the power. With respect to you mentioned about rituals and symbolism, with respect to rituals and symbolism, I'll leave you at this quote with respect to how it relates to religion. And I put all forms of belief systems that are not based in fact and the religion and spirituality. It says, when it comes to religion, the layman sees it as true, the wise man sees it as false, and the powerful man sees it as useful. Now, where you fall in any of those categories, that's up to whomever. But I'm just going to leave it at that point. What we're talking about with respect to building a master culture is a culture, we know our purpose. We know we are black people. We know our identity with respect to what we want as black people that is rooted in race, and we know what we want to achieve. Asians have essentially remained Asian in respect to their culture. That does not say that they have disqualified the use of science and modern technology. Asians are some of the most scientifically advanced nations on the planet, but that does not change who they are. Becoming a scientifically advanced nation will not change your traditional cultures in respect. What is that?
My alarm.
Oh, sorry about your alarm. Wow, I think your alarm does wake you up. I give you that much. Becoming a scientifically advanced nation does not mean you have to give up the traditional cultures that sort of cultivated you. In fact, it complements it to a degree. But once those traditional cultures start to interfere with things that give you actual power to create for yourself and your people things that will grant them a better life, then you have to bring those traditions into question. Because understand this, the past is finite. The future is not. The future is far bigger than the past. 10,000 years ago will be a short period of time compared to 10 million years from now. So we have to think with respect to going into the future because the future is much bigger ahead of us, and the past is what it is. You learn from the past, you take from the past the things that are useful and will aid you with respect to building a powerful people, and you disregard the things that don't. One thing that has been proven as building a scientifically advanced, and I'm talking about real scientifically advanced in terms of science, technology, mathematics, engineering. By mathematics, I mean calculus, differential equations, string theory, number theory, things of that sort that involve that you learn in any university, anywhere else. We're building a scientific civilization, and this has been proven across all nations that have done this, that it creates a better quality of life for the people. Now, you mentioned before that we as Africans are not used to this language of science, and that's just, I would say, inaccurate because what it is shown that any nation, any people who applies these concepts will become powerful. The only difference is the Europeans managed to stumble on it first and use it for their dominion. Asians, came on it later and used it to create the lives they have. We have to use the same tool. Science is a tool, and I mentioned this about tools. Sorry about that. I'm going to finish. When I expect this to be a fire. If someone throws fire at you consistently, you will be afraid of fire. However, if you use fire to build tools and learn how to cook, You will not fear fire. Things that are to be understood, not be feared, and things that are to be used that are to be useful. Yes.
All right.
So there's one thing I want to...
Hold up. This is the host.
Hey, hold on.
I'm getting ready to end the show because I have to go to work, but I want to get the last word.
All right.
And the last word is this. Neo basically said something that's just basically a drop the mic statement. There really is nothing to say after it. If it works, use it. If it don't, get rid of it. And that's the bottom line. I'm not tied to know anything. I'm not tied to something, a belief or a practice just because it's African. If it does not work, we don't need to be engaging in it. And that's the bottom line. And on that note, I love y'all.
Love you too,
when
bro.
I hang up, this is going to end. So this has been a great show. And I will holler at you good people later.
Hey, hopefully y'all let me talk a little bit more next time.
Yeah, next time.
Peace, Dave.
What up?
Peace. That's your background, huh?
Peace. I don't know, man. I don't know what was up with them cats, man. I'm trying to figure out this show,
That's
man.
your background with the TV?
Nah, they had a whole bunch of shit going on.
No. Right now, what I'm hearing, that's your background with the TV?
No.
Nah.
Oh, hey, man, what's up, man? Is somebody still on the line?
What up? It's Dev. Yeah, we're still on the line.
Hey, what's going on, family? What's going on?
What's the deal, bro? Chilling. Who this?
Hey, this brother Equanese, man. I don't mean to bring it so hard, man, but I wanted to respond to the thing that the last brother was just saying, and he brought some good points, but even as he related, talking about, he said something very inaccurate as it related to being able to connect to energy. One thing about energy can never be destroyed. It only transforms stages. So therefore, respecting the energy that came before you, respecting and understanding that energy is what I'm seeing that is the important part of us as Africans. Because like with these crackers, I'm seeing these crackers, they pass that Confederate flag down from one grandpapa to their grandson. They keep that shit alive. It ain't like, the ancestors don't live, because they going to make sure they carry out the same shit that they damn granddaddy carried out. So instead of them whooping slaves, they shooting us in our fucking head. But now, guess what Negroes is doing? We obviously we must be thinking that the past is finite, because we have completely destroyed it. And like Malcolm X said, nigga, you done lost your damn mind. We've lost our mind, basically taking our connection away from our ancestors. So now our eyes are basically, we're going through this new. A lot of our kids, they're talking about wanting to unify with these crackers. And these crackers ain't never had our best interests at heart. And that's why our heartless can tell that our energy that we're using is allowing us to be more than what we were in the past. Obviously, hell, we doing more dumber shit now. How is the energy that we're utilizing helping us to go over and beyond? If we're just having more money to go out there and throw at the damn strip club. Those are facts. We still don't have black-owned grocery stores. It's been like 5 in America, period. We don't control our food supply. We don't control this. I mean, it's good and it's cute to talk about controlling turbines and all this other stuff, but we got to talk about controlling. You know how many gun manufacturing places there are in the world? It's only in Africa that manufacture their weapons. We don't do this shit in America. So anything that you build, whether it be a wind turbine.
The show, we got and I think Dev, you still on? Dev,
yeah,
you still on? Oh, okay, all right. You want to speak to that? Dev?
Yo. It's not, but yeah, that's what I was just saying, man. That's what I was just saying.
Oh yeah, like I said, your opinion is duly noted, but like I said, but you understand what we're all about. we're about basically all the stuff you just mentioned, right, will be solved by leaving this country and building a nation of our own. So that then we wouldn't have these conversations. We can sit there and start building things and enjoying life, and then leaving something for the next generations and everything, But sitting there, we all know the problems, We all know how much money we spend in the churches and everything like that, but that's not going to solve anything. Solving things is basically realizing that we were in a situation that basically is not wholly unhealthy. We need to be on African soil building our own nation. That's what the Black African infrastructure is all about. So we're different from other organizations. Other organizations, they want to talk about Kemet all day and say Hotep and raise their vibration and spirituality. Hey, go right ahead. And I wish them a lot of luck, but that's not what we're here for. And we are going to make this happen. History is irreversible. On that note, I think we're going to go ahead and end the show, because Holt thought he ended the show when he hung up, but there's a couple of people in the chat room. So we're going to go ahead and end the show tonight. Thank you, good people. Thanks for joining us. You have a good night.